Good afternoon and welcome to the Escape Hatch to Wellness. Thank you for tuning in. And today's special guest is Lauren Henry from Brush of Love. And welcome, Lauren, from Los Angeles, California.
Thank you, Yvette. I'm so happy to be here and I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being a guest. And it was interesting because I was having a conversation with my husband because with the Escape Hatch to Wellness, at this point, I'm really focusing on the legs of wellness. And in functional medicine, we have the 5 pillars of wellness, which are stress, sleep, nutrition, fitness, and relationships. So my husband was like, well, what does Brush of Love have to do with any of, wellness? And I said, well, everything, because when it comes time for color affects our emotional and psychological health. And I was like, you're the perfect person to talk about this.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that you understand that, actually, how color and lighting and spatial organization and all of that really affects all of our emotions on a daily basis, let alone our relationships. And I get that people might not understand that at first because they don't seem like they exist together in a way that affects each other directly, but they actually do on a very visceral level.
I think about when you get dressed in the morning and you put certain colors on, and certain colors really make you vibrate with so much life. And then there are colors on, and it just sucks the soul out of you. Do you see that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's also why people say, if I'm not feeling well, I'll dress up or I'll wear a bright color, or that's where the power suit came from with the whole color red for women in the 80s became such a big thing. But yeah, this isn't accidental, the way that color affects us. And when I talk to people and I have them do these little games with themselves, what's your favorite color? And they'll tell me, what color don't you like? Oh, I don't know. Yes, you do. Think about it for a second. And then you have to ask them why. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You do know. Think about it for a second. What about X color turns you off? And once they start thinking about it and realizing it, it's kind of like that onion that you peel back and you can determine, but there are reasons. And so if you're not aware of that on a daily basis, then you don't realize what you don't want to have around you versus what you do. Mm-hmm. And lighting bounces off color. So that affects color as well. Just like the type of paint that you use, the sheen of the paint, whether it's glossy, whether it's matte, and then you add lighting to that. And people think, oh my gosh, that's just too much to think about. Well, it is, but it isn't, because when you're designing a space, it's not just about the aesthetic look. It's also about how it helps the room function based on what you're doing in that space. Wow. If that makes sense.
It makes, for me, it makes absolute sense because I get it. I know how I resonate with color. I understand the texture of the walls, the importance of the finish of the paint on the walls, the functionality of certain colors in certain rooms. So I get that completely. I think that's my inner Michelangelo that comes out when you start talking about that and Da Vinci, who was the architect. But let's kind of go back to the beginning and really where in your path, where in your journey did you give birth to Brush of Love? And what was your inspiration?
Well, it's kind of a story, but it's I suppose it's a little interesting in that it started in 2000 after 9/11 and shifting jobs and figuring out what I wanted to do. And I've always had work in the past that focused somewhat on color. I just didn't realize it, but I was substitute teaching. And in my classes that were so chaotic with so much stuff on the walls, there were, the classroom itself was chaotic with just so much overload of sensory for all of the subjects that you talk about every day. And there were some kids that were matriculating into the class that were on the spectrum of autism. And they were reacting to that sensory overload. And I started to realize that they were so affected by their surroundings because at times we would take them out of that space and then put them into a very a drastic opposite where there was, gray on the walls. There wasn't much going on in the room. It was just one chair, one desk for them to work with a separate teacher. And they were so affected by either the overload of sensory or the starkness of a color or a space. And so I started to put 2 and 2 together and realize, there are some things that we can't change.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of things we can change. And what if we change the color? What if we change the lighting? What if we took away some of the sensory overload in the space? Would that help people, the kids calm down? Would it help their ability to focus? Would it help some of the kids that might have been on the spectrum um, ground themselves a little bit more? And I started doing more research about that and having some focus groups and whatnot. And I was astounded by the reaction I got. And that's where all of this came from.
Wow. Great inspiration, though. Children are phenomenal to watch. So when you were substitute teaching, what was the average age of the kids that you were teaching?
They were anywhere from, I think it was third grade, second grade. So anywhere from 5, 6, and 7 up to about 12. Because I went from grade to grade. So I substitute taught in different, grade levels. But the reaction was all the same. It didn't matter their age. And that was another thing that I noticed, having different kids of different ages come into the same classroom and having the same types of reactions. And then teachers also just being overwhelmed by all the things that were in their space, because I spoke to other teachers about this very idea.
So when you were trying to get someone to focus, whether it's a child or an adult,
Right.
observe that clearing the space, making it more tidy was the first step in funneling down the focus into the present moment of what was going on in front of them. What was the first step in kind of turning that focus and clearing away all this stuff going on around?
Yeah. It wasn't just making it more tidy, it was removing a lot of the information. You teach so many different subjects in one room. So it's important, the thought is that you have everything that you need around you, and then when that class comes up, it's all up, where you need it right there. But the problem with that is there's so much competing information and so many visual, aids and et cetera and so forth, and colors and the lights and the windows, it's on and on and on. It's just too much. So we had to start taking down, I requested to start removing information about different classes and different lessons. And I would, put up what I would need when the class arose, so that there wasn't so much information literally floating around and in the eyesight and the eye line of all of the kids. And then reducing the amount of colors and visual aids and pictures as well, to make it more streamlined for each class. It might have been a little more work for me in terms of getting each class ready, but it was so much more worth it, including for myself, because it was just too much visual stimulation.
Well, I would imagine that with making that concerted effort of, yes, as you said, it's more time on your hands to put up and take down with each class. But I would imagine that because of a more focused learning environment, the kids would have learned better, faster, retained more, and that their grades would have gone up. Are those things that?
Well, that I'm so glad you said that. That did actually happen. First of all, they were calmer in class. Given a few weeks, I was really surprised to see how much energy kind of dissipated, and they were so much calmer in the classroom, which made it easier for me. Their focus level and their energy, yes, exactly. Their focus level and their energy sustained a little more. They were asking to go to the bathroom less, as in a way to escape the room, right? And I was able to have their attention for a longer period of time. And then even for the younger kids, when we had rest time, which was a whole 15 minutes of just putting your head down and resting, they were actually calmer and resting. Instead of fidgeting the whole time and not knowing what to do with themselves for this whole 15 minutes of time, they were able to just put their heads down and rest for a little bit, turn the light off, and things were calm. When we turned the light back on and they were ready to play or do whatever they needed to do, the focus was there. So yes, in the end, within about 2 months, you definitely saw some grades go up in their papers and the older kids as well. And when I started to ask them if they noticed a difference, because this was kind of a test, if you will, they all acknowledged that they felt better. They weren't sure why, but they felt better. I had to tell them the things that I had done for them to notice, but I mean, it really made a difference. And it was exciting for me, again, as a substitute teacher, to see that these things are such simple changes, but the differences were extreme.
Well, first I want to acknowledge the fact that being a substitute teacher cannot be easy, because every time you go into a classroom with new kids, you're having to prove yourself, right?
Right.
Miss Lauren, strong enough to deal with this class, right? So
Yes.
to
Not
build
easy.
them, but to get to that place of consistency, of a relationship of trust, and less busyness will it's such a beautiful thing for the kids. So your perseverance with it is admirable. That's what I will tell you first and
I
foremost.
appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's not easy.
No, it's not. It's not. And I have been conducting sleep seminars for the NCH healthcare systems here in town. And in my sleep seminar, I've been talking about the impact of sleep in the brain, and how with children especially, they need a lot of sleep in order to store the information that they receive during the day into their long-term memory. And if the kids aren't sleeping well at night and then having all this extra stimulation around them in the classroom, their grades are going to go, through the floor. They're just not going to do well, because their brains are just like firing in all different directions as they learn.
Right.
We as adults, we tend to fire the areas of our brain based upon our likes and our dislikes, whereas kids, they don't know what they like or don't like it yet, So you as the adult being able to hone that in just based upon your powers of observation speak volumes for what you can, as the owner and designer with Brush of Love, really do as a catalyst for change in people's homes.
Absolutely. And I can't begin to say how important it is when you're designing a space. We think about what aesthetically pleases us. We look at a design and we think to ourselves, oh my gosh, I love that design. I want that in my home. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what happens very often is we're not thinking about the function of the space. We don't know how these colors on a big wall affect us. And so we make a design, we get our interior designers or what have you up in this space and create this beautiful, gorgeous space. However, we then work or live in that space and we don't understand why we're fidgety, or we can't sleep in the bedroom, or we're having arguments in another room more often than we are somewhere else. You don't realize that, but very often it has to do with the fact that those colors that you selected, while beautiful or while on trend, don't fit the function of the space, and they don't work with you, which is why doing this type of design, sensory design, is so individualized and personalized.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to someone's home and you walk in and you're anxious and you're fidgety and you don't understand why, often it has to do with the lighting, it has to do with the sound, it has to do with the color. Versus another person's home where you go in and you're so cozy and you don't even want to leave. And it's the same. It's sometimes the same even in a restaurant. And there are reasons. There's a reason McDonald's is bright red, bright yellow, bright colors, hard seats, harsh lighting. It's supposed to turn over fast. You go in, you get your food, you're out. You sit for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and you're out. Whereas you're in a restaurant with big cushy seats and warm lighting and darker veneers, and it's much more of a stay here and order and get some wine and relax, and that's what you do. But it's all subliminal, right? People don't realize.
I don't. And but I wonder with McDonald's, yes, you eat faster with reds and oranges and yellows around you, but those primary colors would also have vast appeal to kids.
Correct. Yes.
It reminds me, I was in, when I was working with Disney Cruise Line, I was in the office in Orlando, and the Disney Fantasy was coming out of dry dock, and the ship hadn't been in dry dock for a number of years. And this one was to overhaul the adults only area, which if anybody's watching this who has ever thought about Disney Cruise and you're an adult, you have no kids, go anyway. But that's a whole other conversation. But so I happened to go as part of the press corps. I got to go on for the inaugural of the new rollout with their Tiffany boutique and then this new adults only decor. So what Disney had done was using color psychology. They recognized that certain colors resonated more with children than others. So they took all the color palettes that kids didn't like and put those into the adults only area. They were these rich grays and blues and, you know, deeper reds versus the primary red that
Right.
is costume. And it works to the point where like the kids would come running back down the hall. Oh, let's go check out this area. Oh, this isn't, no, we're not going to stay. And it worked really well because they couldn't keep the kids out of the adult only area prior to dry dock. So their
Right.
application really worked. And this is, you know, Disney. So, I mean, how can you argue with Disney?
No, and that's a great example. I mean, I love interior designers and everything that they do. I'm a little bit different. I often like to work with an interior designer because they have the most beautiful array of design based on their experience. But if they also understand, okay, this is going to be a workspace and this is, you know, going to be a play space for my kids or whatever it's going to be, if you can make that room do 50% of the work for you, keep you energized, keep you focused, it helps your bottom line productivity aspect. All of those things make a huge difference in how you feel in that space and how you're able to function in that space. Your bedroom should definitely have certain colors and certain design aspects in order for you to decompress and enjoy that space as your sanctuary the way it's meant to. But if you put the wrong color in there, that's not going to happen.
Well, what do you do if you have a husband and wife, a couple, even just partners, who she has certain colors that she likes and he has
Right.
he likes, and in order to keep balance in the relationship, how do you work that together so that they don't feel like you're preferring one over the other? Like, what do you do in those cases?
Well, I've had that happen several times, of course. And I won't lie, the husband often acquiesces to the wife, no surprise. But having said that, there's an easy way to combine colors. It just depends what those color patterns are. Often you can have an accent wall of one color and the rest of the walls another color. Also, the accessories can be one color versus a different color pattern on the wall. It's always important to bring in both aspects of both partners so they both feel validated, but they both feel like the space is for them and they can ground into that space. But it's really important to understand what both partners need and want. And very often, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, they need to take some time to figure that out for themselves. They don't often realize that. So I have very detailed questionnaires that I make people fill out before I'll do anything. And I can work remotely from anywhere because all we need are pictures, right? And an understanding of what's actually going on and what they need and want in their space that's, you know, that they're focused on.
These days with FaceTime and being able to, you know, video call like with Zoom, it's easy to walk around and really get a feel for the space, even though you're in California. So all you really have to do is adapting to a time zone change, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, they can take video, they can take pictures, they can do exactly what you just suggested. They can even do panoramic views on their iPhones or their Samsungs. It's not hard at all, and I've done it many times. I've had my business since 2002, and yes, I've traveled internationally. I've done this in Japan. I've worked with people in different states. However, that being said, it's not necessary either. And in today's state of things,
COVID.
for lack of a better phrase,
Okay.
COVID, we certainly don't need to travel. So it's very easy to help people remotely.
So when it comes time for this detailed questionnaire that you have people fill out before you really actually begin, it's the first step of working with someone.
Yeah.
You have every person in the family fill it out separately? Or do they
It depends on what it is that they want done. If it's one specific room, then it's just the people that occupy that space, obviously. If it's a whole home and we're doing every room, then yes, within reason, if I can get everybody's information, it's much easier. because I need to take into account, especially if there's a room that two kids are sharing, or if it's a mom or a dad's office that also doubles as a playroom. How do we do that so that it's functional for both? And there are ways to do that. So it's important that all of these questions are answered. And for some people who have kids on the spectrum, I'll even have them fill out a journal, if you will, for about a week. Each parent will do that separately, because they will often come up with totally different observations and feelings than than if they had filled it out together, and they read one another's and they're like, I didn't know that. It's amazing how little that true communication of what affects each person occurs, because you don't think that you need to explain these things to your spouse. You assume that they know it, but again, you don't ever want to assume. And men and women are wired differently, right, Yvette? You know that.
Yes.
Yes, so they're going to pick things up differently. They're going to respond differently. They're going to feel differently. So it's really important that they both write out for themselves their own observations and compare them later.
So in some ways, you do some marital counseling, relationship counseling with women.
Well, it ends.
I really feel that it would be something as a benefit to any relationship to really sit down and understand that level of complexity of your partner, and then working towards that when it comes time for shared spaces. Because if you have a dining room and there's 4 people in the family, all 4 need to have an opinion. We have an opinion about what goes in there, but when the colors come in, to actually have your kids sit down and eat, even down to what color your plates could be, right?
True. And that affects the food that you eat. I mean, we know this, the size of the plate, the color of the plate, the way it contrasts to the food. That's why some people can eat more versus some people eating less. I mean, there's nothing it doesn't affect. And that's what I feel like, 9 out of 10 people don't realize that. They're like, what are you talking about? It's just a color. And then I do interactive events with them, and they are shocked at the responses that people get. And they realize how much of an effect color has and they're just floored. And that's one of my favorite things to do, because it's great to see people right in front of you have this epiphany and are shocked.
I was painting at a client's house, and the client had chosen this really pretty color of gold. So to me, it looks like a yellow base to the color. And so my husband came in and took a look at the room when it was all done, all the paint was dried, and it was all finished. And he goes, that's pink. I said, pink? How do you see pink? But he sees the red in the goldness of the paint. So he sees it as a pink, and I see it as a yellowish gold, and as does the client. So it's just funny, even in something that it says, golden, what was the word? A golden wheat or golden something or other. And you see it on those little tabs. But which is my next question for you. Is you go into Lowe's, a Home Depot, a Sherwin-Williams, a Benjamin Moore. You can look at catalogs and everything else. You can choose a paint color, and if you buy that paint and bring it home and put it on your wall, what's the guarantee it's actually going to look the same?
It's not. Here's the thing. First, let me go back to what you were just saying about your husband. It's not unusual at all for that to happen. And the thing to keep in mind is that men have a tendency to be colorblind more than women, and they have less rods and cones in their eyes. Typically, not all men, obviously, there's tons of male designers, but there are more men that are colorblind than women, or just can't see the definition, they can't discern the differences in color as well. It's not unusual, which is why it makes men crazy when they see 5 different types of white and they say, what are you talking about? It's all white. And it's not all white. Yeah, it's all different. So going back to what you just said, it's very important when you are looking at a color to realize when you see it on a grand scale, on a big wall, it's going to be very different than when you see it on a small little sample. And even when you go home and you put like a square of color on the wall and you compare it with 4 different colors, it's also very difficult to tell. One of the things I suggest that people do is on the computer. I mean, all of our monitors are a little bit different in terms of color, saturation and whatnot, but if you're able to, they now have the ability to take a color and put it on your virtual wall on the computer in a lot of these paint company sites. So you can see on a grand scale what it looks like. And I recommend that people do that as much as possible to give them an idea of how it's going to look, because very often you're not taking into consideration, again, if it's 2 coats, 3 coats, the lighting, the sheen, and that's going to change how it looks on a big wall. And it's really important that you remember that.
You know, you mentioned the lighting and the sheen. This is a really interesting thing that same client's house, and the color that it had been I painted in the laundry area that my husband saw as pink and we saw as gold. That was the same color.
So
that
funny.
her living room, and she wanted to carry the green of the dining room as an accent wall in the living room. So I painted it, and the two of us went, what it looked like battleship gray, this green color that was so beautiful, like a spring green in a room that had French doors, 2 windows. When you take away that big natural light and then put it,
right,
you got all this gold over here and then green over here. With the natural light coming in, reflecting off the gold of the walls, changed the color of the paint on the wall to the point where it was so unattractive. It was a color you would never want to put in your home, at least in my opinion. But it was like.
So what did you guys do?
In the end, we found that wall. I ended up painting gold to match all the other walls, and then I changed the accent wall in the living room to a different location wall. So when you walk in the front door, you got gold, gold, gold here. And then the accent green that I did in the dining room, we carried as an accent wall in the living room. So if you sat in certain areas, it was like one line of green. And with the way that the light hit those colors, it was no more of a contrast anymore. And they weren't competing with each other to influence the other walls. It was really interesting, but I was like, I love color and been not afraid to have color in anywhere I've ever lived, afraid to wear color. But at the same time, I never really thought as deeply about how the reflection of light on opposing walls can influence how you receive color on a contrasting wall. It was really an interesting color psychology study that I was able to like, wow, this is really interesting. So that wall that was that funky green, I'll tell you what, hurricane comes here, if anything is left of the house, that wall will still be standing with all the paint that's on it at this point in time.
Yeah, it's a very good lesson. I mean, natural light is so different than artificial light. And then it depends if it's an LED type of light. And then you have to remember what makes up a color, right? What colors make up a color. And, you have blue, yellow, green, all the same, all those same aspects, because, you take 2 colors, you make another color, right? So it's really important that you take those things into consideration, because it will pull out the bottom color, or the base color, I should say, depending on the lighting. And then you have, like I said, sheen. Is it glossy? Is it matte? Is it eggshell? Or, whatever. And those things make a difference too. But there's all this minutia that you have to take in consideration. And people don't think that way. We're not raised to think that way. We're not taught these things. So why would you think that way? Right? You just pick a color and you put it on the wall, and that's it. Yeah, but that's not it. And if we understand how everything works, we can make things function better for ourselves in our space and make our rooms do half the work for us. And that's what I want people to understand.
So let me ask you this from let's say I'm a business owner, and I have,
Right.
a lot of employees, and I am wanting to renovate my space to help the productivity levels of my employees go up. So if I have, 30 different people in my office, who do I just go in and paint all the walls gray, like a neutral color, and just, put them all there? Or how do I deal with the complexity of all those people in a business environment?
Well, you can do two things. You can have a general question and answer sheet for people to answer, which will just give you, it's more general, so you get an idea of how most people feel. And then you can compile that, or you can just do color psychology in that you take colors that support basic emotions. So, if you have a place that's all about sales and you need a lot of energy all the time, different types of oranges are great colors to use to impact energy and keep keep it stimulated in the workplace. But you also want to be careful that you don't pick one that's too bright, because then it overstimulates and it's not good. Just like some people will use white because they want to keep it clean, and they want to keep it sterile and fresh. But if you use too much white and it's too stark, then it's actually very anxiety producing.
Ooh.
And you don't want that. There's a big difference. Yeah, there's a big difference that's why there's different types of whites. And some whites have a little bit of cream in them to make it a little warmer. Now, you may not notice that, but it depends on what accents you put in with that white. So you don't want to keep everything cool, having everything neutral, too cool without any warmth. And I know some people will say, well, people add pictures and they add plants and they add this and they add that. I understand that, but that's when you really have to look at, what are you trying to do in this workspace? What kind of time frame, what kind of energy levels, what do you need in this space to happen? What do you want your people to accomplish in this space? And when you find all that information out, which is often similar for everyone, then it's easier to design that space based on spatial organization, the lighting they have available, and the color that's going to support people's energy level, focus, and then in the end, their bottom line productivity, the results that they're looking for. That's what you want to accomplish. That's what you want to affect.
Well, I would think as a business owner, you want to maximize that potential, no matter what it is that your business is about. You really want your employees,
Right.
because obviously we all have bills to pay. We all have a bottom line that we're responsible to, and we want to do it in a healthy way that really helps our employees become, not maybe say become the best version of themselves, but really maximize someone's potential. Who would have thought that something as simple as color could actually help people actualize their potential?
Without a doubt, it helps to maximize their potential, and it definitely makes everything easier for you to accomplish in that space. And there's certainly more than one design and more than one color that will allow you to do that, which is why it's important to get to know the culture and the general employees that you have in your space and what you want to accomplish. And like I said, what's available to you. If you don't have natural lighting available to you, then you're going to shift certain aspects of the color and the design that you're going to use versus having natural light available to you. So all these things make a difference.
So if you are someone who's renting an apartment, obviously painting the walls is not normally part of the contract that you're allowed to do, but as
Right.
you're bringing accessories in, bringing blankets, pillows of those colors that you resonate the best with, is a solution for
Yes.
a renter, right?
I would say yes. I would say one thing that's for everybody, no matter who you are, is it's really important to always create a space where there is grounding for nature. So you always want to have plants, fake or real, I prefer real, but fake or real in your home. So no matter where you are, office or home, you definitely need to have some sort of plants in your space. It makes an enormous, enormous difference,
Really?
subliminally and consciously.
Really?
Yes, it does. It's really important. I mean, if you go to a doctor's office and there's no plants there, you'll start to feel agitated. You should test it out for yourself. Go to different places and see for yourself if there's a plant somewhere. Like, just look around. If you go to a doctor's office, very often you're going to feel much better when there's a plant in the space that you can see. You usually ground to that plant. You know, it makes you feel better when there's a plant. I mean, I tell people to test it out for themselves.
Yeah.
If you go to a space, an office building, and there's no plants around versus where there's a plant, you just see how you feel. It makes a very big difference to have plants in your space.
I'll have to test that theory out, because we know, living in Florida, we've got our front door, you've got plants everywhere. I mean, our house is surrounded with avocado tree, palm trees.
But if you don't have a green thumb, or you find that they die a lot, you can find something that looks extraordinarily real that is fake.
Yeah, these
And
days.
yeah, these days you can find that. And that makes a big difference.
You know, let me ask you, with COVID, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, you know, all these kids are now starting to be homeschooled.
Right.
So, is there a word of advice you can give to a parent who might be tuning in, watching this, about the space for the kids, and the importance of having them have their own space, maybe in order to learn?
Well, it's definitely a great question, and it's a little harder because it's not so easy to take them out of a comfortable space and put them in a space that's meant more for quote unquote learning. Some kids have their desk in their bedroom, which is where they play and they relax. And so it's hard to get your mindset changed as a kid to sit at that desk. But I would say to make it as learning efficient as possible. So you have to remove all of the quote unquote relaxation play stuff from their space.
Yeah.
And make that space as learning efficient as possible. So they know while they're here working on their computer, they have their pencils, they have their pad, they have what they need, and everything else is removed. So even if it's just their, you know, every day it's on their desk, whatever their play stuff is, remove it. Keep everything in that one space about learning. So it at least feels a little bit different than being in their bedroom and they can see all of the fun stuff they play with, you know, and they are easily derailed, if you will, from focusing on learning to their, you know, train tracks on the floor, or their stuffed animals, or the game they were playing with their friend, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You've really got to make that space as learning efficient as possible.
Okay. That's good advice for the parents out there. Now, I have a question for you, which is, what is your favorite color and why?
Blue. Now, here's a great little way to explain my point that I've been making this whole time about how different people see color. So I think I say blue. You get a color of blue in your head, right? What blue are you thinking of when I say blue?
When you said blue, I thought of like the color of the Caribbean Sea, that kind of, it's not light blue, but it's not navy blue. It has that aquamarine blue, but the aquamarine is in a blue side, not the green side.
Yeah, it's like a Windex color almost, right?
Yeah, it's lively. It has light in it.
Lively. Okay, that's the blue you thought of. When I say my favorite color is blue, I'm thinking of like a cornflower blue.
Oh, it's a pretty color though.
Yeah, it's a beautiful. Now, I love the ocean and I love that turquoise Windexy color, but my favorite color blue is a different blue. And my point in saying that is, whenever you mention a color, everyone's going to get their own version of that color. And it's almost never going to be the same. And that is what people have to understand. I love cornflower blue because It's a beautiful, beautiful color that has a slight sustained amount of energy, but it's very calming.
But do you wear a lot of it?
I wear a lot of versions of blue. Cornflower blue is one of my favorite colors to wear, but I often wear colors that are a little more vibrant in blue because it brings out my eyes, if I'm being honest.
Get more
It makes
compliments.
my eyes look more blue. I do get more compliments on brighter blues. But if I was to choose and you were to say why, it allows me to have a little energy. I like the energy in the color. So it's not too subdued, but it's still very calming and peaceful. And so that's the color I think of in terms of surrounding myself. Now, in terms of wearing a color blue, yes, I will pick out a more vibrant color blue probably to wear, or a deeper navy, just because of vanity's sake, that I get lots of compliments when I do. But that's definitely my favorite color, and that's why. When I do these seminars, I have people talk about what color red. When I said red, did you think of? Somebody thinks of a blue red that's kind of like a brick, and somebody thinks of a blood red that's or a fire engine red that has an orange base to it. And they're totally different. And the person who gets a lot of anxiety, you don't want that fire engine red in their space.
No.
You might want more of a blue red in their space because it's warmer, but we don't think about these things. And so it's really important. That's why when you're talking about hair color as an example, and you say to somebody, oh, I'm going to be red, right? We're going to be red. Well, what kind of red do you like? I like a copper red that's like a penny. Somebody else might want an auburn red that's really warm. Somebody else might want an I Love Lucy red that's more brassy and has a little more orange to it. So it's very important to be able to show the colors you're thinking of in your head or describing them, but you can't just say a flat color because there's too many versions, right?
I understand
It's very personal.
Language. If you say one thing, it leaves too much up for interpretation, and then
Correct.
can go horribly wrong. It's like, okay, well, you said to bring this home. Well, I did say that, but that's not what I meant. You have those conversations with your spouse. So I understand that.
Yeah. So color, again, is very important. It's integral, in fact. And there's a lot more that goes into it than you would think. I wrote a book called Unique Kids, Unique Surroundings, which is on lulu.com. But you can always let me know if you're interested or if you have any questions. You could go to lauren@brushoflove.com. You can find me there. My website is brushoflove.com. There's a lot of great information on the website as of now. It's anything that you need, you can contact me and ask, and I'll do whatever I can to help wherever you are.
Awesome. Now you mentioned that you do seminars, and now obviously with limited travel and whatnot, are you available for doing webinars and on a video platform of still conducting it with people, via Zoom?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can do Zoom videos or webinars. If you have any questions, if you want me to do one for your office or a group of friends, or for anyone that has questions, your company, if you have any questions about that, again, you can email me, but I am available to do seminars and webinars easily. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, before we go, I do want to touch on the subject of autism, because autism has been on the rise, dramatically on the rise in our country. And
Right.
there are a lot of families dealing with autism in their homes. And you have, children who are borderline autistic who can live outside of the home, but then you have many who are not, and that they will be forever in the home with their parents. And obviously, as a parent, you love your children and you want to create a safe place for your children, especially those who have autism. So I know that's an area that you really have focused on and specialize in. Is there something you'd like to share with the audience who might have an autistic child, niece, grandchild, even a friend who has autism in their family? Is there something you'd like to share about that from
Yeah, I would. Thank you for bringing that up, Yvette. I will say that kids on the spectrum are affected, and parents and friends know this to the 100th degree in terms of color and lighting and sensory elements. So in your space, you may be thinking, my kid's not sleeping. I don't know what to do for my child. I don't know what to do in the space. Everything I'm talking about, we can make a difference. I've had years of experience where children go from not sleeping at all to sleeping through the night, just changing their room, their color, their lighting, their spatial organization. I've done it over and over. You can find it on my website. But I'm telling you, these things that seem very small and you think to yourself that can't make enough of a difference, it absolutely does. And I want you to think about those things while you're also thinking about doing these major types of changes for your child. You can make an immediate difference in your space with paint color, lighting, tactile elements, and spatial organization. And know that I'm here to help you. The book can help you, but it's not as hard as you think it is. And you could even do it yourself in your home. You don't have to necessarily hire a bunch of people. So it can be extremely cost effective, especially when people are really hurting right now, not working, and everyone's home. You want your child to feel good about being in their space. And there are ways to do that and have them still feel connected to you. So please feel free to contact me at Lauren, Lauren, at brushoflove.com. Thank you for today. It's been wonderful, and I've really appreciated the time with you.
Absolutely. I've known you for going on 30 years, I think it is.
Yeah, a long time.
Long time. And it's interesting that you said that cornflower blue is your favorite color. And I will tell you, the one color I associate with you used to have this emerald green formal that you used to wear. It was off the shoulder. And that emerald green, Irish green, the Emerald Isle, that color, I always think of you. The two go hand in hand. It's like
I love that color. It was a Kelly green suit that I wore, and I loved it. And thank you for remembering that.
It was a beautiful color, and because I think it was silk. It looked like it was raw silk, if I remember. And the light used to dance with the color because of the way that the fabric caught the light wherever you were, and it was such a beautiful piece of fabric and a great color for you. So,
thank you. I appreciate that.
A great power color for you, Lauren.
Yeah, I don't mind being associated with that color at all.
Land of leprechauns. And in closing, what I will share, because I have known you for such a long time, is that for anyone who's watching this, and I know how passionate you are about helping people, and I seen that with you in a variety of environments, and this would be no different in that you literally have this sense of wanting to fight for the best for people, and at the same time you also can put them on a course that will help them not only spend their money wisely, but do so consciously, creating a sanctuary and an oasis in their home that ends up being timeless and that they resonate with, and they end up being happier. And that's something that I've seen you do over the years, and you stick to it. That's not something that's just, a whim or a phase. It is truly who you are. So as an advocate,
thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Mental and psychological, emotional health that comes through helping people with color. Color your world with a brush of love.
Thank you so much. That's perfect. That's what I'm trying to do.
So thank you for joining me today for the Escape Hatch to Wellness. Stay tuned for more, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe.